Touch of Evil stars Charlton Heston, Orson Welles, and Janet Leigh in the primary roles. We'll get into performances right away. Orson Welles does a great job playing a drunken, racist, bigoted cop who is definitely corrupt throughout the entire film. They waste no problem showing that in the film as well. And just to show how much of a beaten, disheveled man he is to a certain extent. He's drunk, he's bigoted, he has a whole bunch of physical ailments. And Orson Welles plays him very well throughout the entire film. And I think his performance is the performance of the movie. When he's on screen, the movie plays really well, and it is definitely interesting to watch him do his thing, even though you are to detest this character. But Orson Welles does a really good job playing this character. Janet Leigh, who is the wife of, I would say, the main character, it would be Susan Vargas, is the character she plays. She's not given much in this movie, but she does a good job. She's the love interest, and eventually she goes another direction that's common in noir films, but she does a good job with what she has, and that's about really it with her, unfortunately. A good performance. Not much to say about that. Now, the problem I'm going to have is Charlton Heston. Okay. Charlton Heston, for what he can do, does an okay job. Now, if you don't remember Charlton Heston was the main principal actor in Planet of the Apes. The reason why I'm mentioning this is because Charlton Heston is white. And the main character of the movie is Miguel Vargas, who is a Mexican police detective played by Charlton Heston. Okay? And a part of me thanks God that Charlton Heston did not even attempt to have a Mexican or Spanish accent, because, oh my God, that would have been awful. That would have been so bad to deal with. However, okay, with that being said, seeing Charlton Heston basically painted brown with a mustache and just sounding like Charlton Heston, having you believe he's Mexican, was really distracting in this movie. And I know when watching old movies, they are pictures of their time, and they do things that not great by today's standards. And for the most part, I don't have any problem watching movies that have these types of issues. Like, I like Breakfast at Tiffany's, but even I can recognize the character in that movie that is quote-unquote problematic. It's not a great character and not really that funny, but it's such a small part of the movie where I can just look at them going, I don't care, whatever, no big deal. When it's the main character of the film, however, that's a problem. And that was a big distraction in this movie for me. This was at any time where he would have to speak Spanish to another Spanish-speaking person or another Mexican, it just compounded further how badly casted this was. Like, this is badly casted. At no point do you buy that Charlton Heston is a Mexican detective. At no point. And that's the other thing that I found really odd about this movie, okay? So the main character is a Mexican detective, okay, played by a white guy, and I'm guessing brown shoe polish. Yet every other Mexican or every other Spanish-speaking person, I'm pretty sure they're Mexican because it's set in Mexico, but anyway, every other Spanish-speaking person in this movie is played by Spanish-speaking people. And that's good, except they're all the crime people. They're the bad guys. They're the ne'er-do-wells, the people that you're supposed to be afraid of. So the hero, who is a Mexican detective, is played by a white guy. But the villains, they had no problem casting other Mexicans. That was that. I gotta be honest. Again, I'm not one that gets bothered by this stuff too much. I usually am able to compartmentalize and go, all right, it's just the time, whatever. But it did bother me a bit in this. Like, it bothered, not even a bit, it bothered me a good amount when I was watching this movie, where I'm sitting here watching the movie, and it's a good story, but I just can't get over the fact that the one good Mexican in the entire movie is played by a white guy in brown shoe polish. And it's Charlton Heston. I couldn't get over it. And when he's the main character of the movie, that is hard to deal with. And I had a seriously hard time going through the movie, watching Charlton Heston do his, I'm a Mexican, I'm like, oh my Lord, holy crap. So I just sat there hoping that Orson Welles or Janet Leigh would come back on the screen, because it was really hard to square that performance up in there. I think it's such a distraction that it detracts from the film in a major way. So much so that a part of me hopes they remake this movie and do what Steven Spielberg did. Okay, let me preface. I'll say this as well. Okay, off to a tangent a bit. I watched and reviewed West Side Story, the remake that Steven Spielberg did in 2021. And I came away from it going, at first before I watched it, I was like, this is so unnecessary. West Side Story is great. Yeah, okay, there's only one Puerto Rican in it. I get that. But did it really need to be remade? And I came out of West Side Story going, you know what? That's a good movie. And that's a different interpretation of West Side Story that I have no problem recommending and enjoying too. I didn't go all the way and say I prefer it over the original. But what I did say was basically Spielberg's is a more cinematic version, whereas the original is more true to the theater. So there's just two different styles of that type of movie. So that's an off tangent. That's how normally, when they remake movies, I'm kind of like, is that necessary? I think if they remade Touch of Evil today, I think it would be a very good thing. Like, have Russell Crowe be Orson Welles' character, and have a Spanish-speaking actor play Mike Vargas in this, and just do the movie again. If they did that, I would have zero problem with it, because Charlton Heston as this character is so damn distracting that I couldn't get over watching the film and watching him, in all honesty, doing a very bad job playing this character. Which is, it's sad, because the story and the screenplay is actually very good. This is also written by Orson Welles. It is based off of a book called Badge of Evil, written by Whit Masterson, okay? And the way it's written and the way it's shot, like, I'll stay with the way it's written. The way it's written is very good. With the exception of Vargas, everyone has shades of gray except for, of course, the main antagonist, which is Police Captain Hank Quinlan, who is played by Orson Welles. And it is clear throughout the entire movie, you're meant to not like Quinlan. You're meant to basically, you are to know that he is a crooked cop and something needs to be done about him. But the movie has enough turns and twists and enough gray to really make you question whether justice will happen in this movie. In that specific sense, the writing is very good. And I think the characters are written very well as well in this. The story is engaging. There's some pretty good characters for a 50s noir. It's really, aside from the major gripe I have, it is an interesting and a very good film noir. The direction is also very good. The way that Orson Welles shoots the scenes in this movie, uses the camera techniques and tilts that he does, and has a lot of outside framing in the film to signify when people are getting shadowed, or when people are having conversations in the background and their importance. They're shot very well in this. I think as a director, I still prefer Citizen Kane when it comes to his directing style, but this is actually very good, and he does a pretty good job pulling the full film forward throughout. I'm sitting here, and I thought about this last night too. I'm recording this late. I usually record this on a Thursday. It's Friday, so I've had an extra day to sit on this and think about the movie. I think without Charlton Heston's performance, I would have really liked this movie, but I also understand to a certain extent why people celebrate these classics, because without something like Touch of Evil, you wouldn't get other classic noirs from like the 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s. Like, you wouldn't have the possibility of having a Hank Quinlan in another type of movie if this didn't work so well. And it does work. The fact that people still praise this movie to a certain extent as one of the greats, either I'm becoming much more sensitive about this stuff than I'm realizing, or I think a lot of people are excusing how bad the performance of Charlton Heston is in this movie. Like, it is super distracting in this. Normally, I can compartmentalize and just say, okay, different times, can't think about it that way, just move on. And normally I'm able to. But for some reason in this movie, I just couldn't. I couldn't sit through the entire movie and listening to Charlton Heston play a Mexican detective and not be like, what's going on here? What are we doing? So, yeah. Comment on the comment section if you want to excoriate me for it. That's fine. But yeah, I just can't. I can't give it high praise. I think that performance is so bad, and it's so damn distracting.